The video map showed us how to get to the central elevator for all of the Demo's installation. We were very near. All that separated us from our goal was a wall. The wall had a switch, a full-body bas-relief of a cloven-hoofed alien, and it wasn't his tongue that required flicking. My face flushed. You'd better take this one, PFC Sanders. In here I thought you were a born lever puller. Arlene flicked the switch. The blue-gray wall cranked down into a slit in the floor, revealing a spacious lift. Deluxe service, Arlene said, pointing at the labeled bank of elevator buttons. We'd made it through the containment area. Below us was the refinery, then Demo's lab, the command center, the central hall, and 3 levels below that which were unlabeled. Basement? Skip the crap, I said. Yeah, well, maybe. Maybe? Makes sense to me. Every time that door slides open, we run the risk of being stormed by giant vampire slugs from the planet Pornos, or being machine gunned to death by Nazi Schnutzstaffel. Fly, these lifts didn't work too well even back when we had people maintaining them. They got stuck all the time. If the sensors detected anything in the shaft, you stopped at the floor above. If a door was open somewhere, the whole elevator could freeze. Go ahead and push the basement button. I'll bet you a month's pay we won't make it more than a couple of levels. Then we'll have to find another lift somewhere. I looked at her and snorted. You're so full of good cheer. Well, ready or not, here goes nothing. Here went nothing, all right. I pushed the button. We started with a jerk and ground downward, skewing back and forth dangerously. As we descended toward the refinery, I saw that the lift didn't take us there directly, but to a warehouse section we'd have to pass through first. In the distance, we had an actual view of the refinery through large, gaping holes in the floors and ceilings. Some kind of fighting had gone on here. We had descended some 50 meters. What we could see of the refinery was laid out like an open maze. It was possible to see in the distance an expanse of pink, moving objects that looked like fleshy cubes or blocks. I hoped they weren't alive, weren't the next creatures on the hit parade. They were gigantic, reminding me of the organic ladder and the pulsing walls back on Phobos. Then we'd moved past the point where we could see the refinery. Our descent brought us to a more normal scene. Normal in this case meant a warehouse area stuffed with UAC boxes, to the height of 12 feet or more, and so densely packed as to create their own pseudo-corridors. We'd noticed a number of humanoid figures with the familiar brown hide and white spikes, scurrying for cover. Back in imp country again. The lift stopped, not quite all the way to the floor. We had to jump down about 3 meters. Arlene peeked over the edge. You owe me a month's pay, Corporal Flaggart. Did I take the bet? I don't recall saying any such thing. Native American giver. We hopped out onto the ugliest, puke-green marble I'd ever seen, but it was still good to have something solid underfoot. All right, PFC Sanders, let's do this by the numbers. Sure, Fly. So which box is number 1? And how come we never do stuff by the letters? I threw her a withering glance, like an old brother to a pesky sister. We were ready to rock and roll. Fighting demons had spoiled me. I liked an enemy that didn't shoot back. We popped through the warehouse like nobody's business, pulse galloping, keyed to instant reaction. The refinery had its share of toxic ooze. We didn't pay it any mind, but so far there were only a few sticky regions instead of slime beach. I looked for barrels of the stuff, my favorite way of dealing with imps, but there were none. The first fireball missed us by a country click. The second came too close to Arlene to suit me, so after I killed the imp, I wasted ammo and killed him again to teach him a lesson. They were smart enough to duck in and out of the natural defenses provided by the stacked boxes, but not enough to gang up on us or show any other sign of working together. None of these guys were talking. Still, there were a lot more of them than there were of us. One almost got me from behind. If he'd had a partner, I'd have been dead meat. Instead, Arlene slid in behind the both of us and used her bayonet like a can opener. Busy as I was staying alive, I could appreciate the sheer grace of Arlene. Back to the wall of boxes, cradling her shotgun like a baby. Never mind dogs as man's best friend. With hand gestures, I indicated who would take which section. Another 15 minutes and we were back in the same place. She'd killed more than I had. The warehouse area had been cleared. I was tired enough to wish one of those magical blue spheres would make an appearance. I hadn't told her about that because it seemed too unbelievable, even in a place like this. But Arlene the mind reader had brought a small black case back with her. It looked medical. I'd have to start calling her Doc. Opening it, she produced a syringe filled with clear liquid, labeled Cardiac Augmentation Stimulation Unit. I held it for a second, then carefully passed it back to her as if it were a loaded weapon.
"Can't believe I found this," she said. "It's synthetic adrenaline, to be used on patients who are in the throes of cardiac arrest."
What would it do to you or me? She paused, biting her lip again.
In a normal person, the adrenaline rush would make you super strong. There's a drawback, though. It could also give you tachycardia and kill you.
Just say no to having an edge, I commented, taking the black package and its contents and adding it to my collection.
Fly, maybe we should toss it. That stuff could be too much of a temptation.
Hey, if push comes to shove, we can inject one of them with it, right up their monster fundaments, all in the interests of science. The only unlocked door led to a huge, green marble chamber with a collection of weird red pillars. Pulsing veins stretched around these pillars like living ropes. The sharp, cloying odor of perspiration combined with the sick, sweet stench of rotting meat. Mechanical stuff was fine with me, even organic stuff like the Arbitorium, but I didn't like it when they combined, and I could tell where one part left off and the other began. The throbbing of the veins matched the throbbing in my head. I was almost grateful for the appearance of a number of imps. At least they took my mind off the architecture. Then some more imps, and some more after that. Too much of a good thing.
"Check your sixth, Fly,"
said Arlene. I even looked behind me. Across the room, sure enough, even more snot-spitting spinies. My gratitude faded fast. I made out a dozen imps. I started the Donnybrook with a well-aimed shell. Between their fireballs and our shotguns, we had one serious firefight. I thought the pillars would catch fire, so thick were the red flames and black smoke. I killed 2. Arlene killed 3. The survivors were better than the previous imps at dodging behind the pillars, and even our shotgun extender mags were running dry. They forced us back into a corner, pinning us down. Mexican standoff time. I wanted to bail. Then I pumped, and the slide locked. Nothing up my sleeve. Nothing in my gun. Now what? Time to even the odds. Arlene was watching the imps firing off a shot now and then, looking down at her mag window and frowning. I reached inside my vest, pulled a hypodermic and studied it. Intravenous? No. Intramuscular. Well, that was easier, at least. But could I actually do it? To myself? Jesus, what a dilemma. For a moment it was like being back on Phobos. That needle bothered me more than flaming mucus in my face. Without question, the next scientific revolution should move beyond the need for needles. But more important,
Could I risk a heart attack if I had a bad reaction? Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I'm a Marine. Semper Fi, Mac. I gave myself the shot. At first, nothing. Then the stuff stimulated my adrenal glands, and in a minute I was filled with red rage. The world turned crimson, and my breath was fire. My heart beat so fast that it spun in my chest like a gyroscope. I drew my bayonet from my webbing and bolted from the corner. If Arlene yelled after me, I didn't hear it. All that mattered was to kill, getting in tight and cutting the steak. Blood, rare. God, how I loved imp blood, thick as red ink from a shattered paint stick. Communion wine splashing on the floors of eternity. Every motion was a target to strike. Flesh was too easy. Bone was the real work. The blade sticking in the cartilage, the cracking and crunching inspiring me to greater efforts. I hardly noticed the blood splashing in my eyes. The world was already a red haze. Liquid salt was trivial pain as I swung my blade in the center of adrenal agony. The more I killed, the heavier the weight in my arms. But exhaustion spurred me to greater fury. I no longer saw the Chinese masked faces of the imps, only a blur. Their claws rent my flesh, but we were too tight for them to use their best weapon. Dimly I realized that I was bleeding from many wounds. That was fine with me. Blood kept me warm. Theirs, mine, anyone's. Just so that I could continue to swing a blade and slay the bastards. Motion must be met with motion. An imp exploded in front of me, before I could even reach it. Only one imp left now. Fly! A voice called my name near at hand. I hadn't expected any of these imps to speak, especially not in a high, almost feminine voice calling my name. I was so surprised that I hesitated for a moment, blade poised over the last imp. Fly! My vision began to clear. My arm was a bar of lead, my chest a sharp pain, as the old heart slowed to merely fast. The fury slowly lifted from me like a thick, red, Tridio theater curtain drawing back. The hazy shape before me grew solid and took on familiar features. Arlene's features. I was very glad that I hadn't killed that last imp.